Good evening, SE fans. I'm Pierce. We got Sushi here. We got Quaid. We got Veronica. We got William. All here to review Sushi's video. And Sushi, I hear you're kind of like a new content creator, kind of, sort of. Why don't you tell me about that?
Yeah, Sound Epistemology is out doing a SE tour all over the country, and he's been going at it for like 6 months, maybe a year at this point. Anyway, he was coming sort of through my area, reached out to him, we hooked up and did some SE IRL. First time for me, amazing experience. I've been on the Discord for years, did the practice sessions, had thousands of SE conversations, nothing like doing it with people in real life that like haven't really thought about their beliefs. Totally fantastic. If you haven't done it, please go do it. Even if you don't film it, just go out and put a sign up and talk to people. It is a great experience.
Awesome. Yeah, I couldn't agree more myself. And today we're going to be using a checklist here. So here is the checklist. It's kind of the initial run. And we'll be referencing this to see how the SE was. See whether it was SE, see how well Sushi did. And before we get started, do you have any...
Part of the reason I wanted this one reviewed.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, before we get started, did you want to say anything about the video, or should we just jump in?
I think this was maybe my third session, like in real life session. So it was definitely something for sure.
Okay. Perfect. Then we will jump in, and anybody who's watching, if you have any critiques as we go along, be sure to put that in the comments, and we'll get started here.
So how this works is, or to have the most productive conversation, we want to talk about a deeply held belief, because our beliefs influence our decisions, right, and how we interact with the world. So, is there like any things that you're like, yeah, this is definitely true, like
right
100%?
Off the bat? Could I just? I think it's worth calling out that if you're going to engage in these kinds of conversations, you can't wear those shorts. You just can't. Look at those knees. How is anybody supposed to think about that deeply held belief if you're waving those legs around at them? I mean,
wow. You know you like them.
I was raised. It had to be said.
Like, not a religious family at all, but my dad's side is really religious. Like, in Mexico, they have a lot of crosses, like, because majority of Mexicans are Catholics, Christians. So, in my dad's side, I remember I didn't know that much, so my grandma had to teach me a lot of it.
Okay.
But in my mother's side, I didn't know that much about religion, so I kind of grew up like where a lot of people that I knew were really religious. I was like, not that religious.
You're not that religious?
Yeah, but no, I've been trying to lean more towards it because I find it really interesting.
You're trying to go towards religion?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a particular religion that you're
maybe just Christianity, I guess.
Christianity, yeah. Okay. So what about like Christianity like is enticing to you, or like what makes you think like Christianity is true?
I don't know. Like for me, like it's kind of the religion that I know most about, because I don't know about Islam or Buddhism, even though I took a class of it, which is also kind of interesting. I like it, but I feel like it's the one that I can relate most to, because like if, for example, I live in Mexico and I talk about Islam, they're gonna be like, what is he talking about? Because not many people know about it. And I also feel like, because my family also believe in a thing that in Mexico is kind of the Virgin Mary, but we call it La Virgen de Guadalupe, or Virgin of Guadalupe. That's kind of what I believe in, who is kind of like not a savior, but kind of like something you pray on. Okay. When you need like assistance or like a guide, you kind of just kneel and just like ask like forgiveness or like advice, which I normally do.
Interesting. Okay.
So what I noticed was you kind of asked him, why he believed what he believed, and then he kind of just elaborated more on what he believed. So I'm assuming you're going to kind of get back to that, but I guess we'll see.
So you would say that like Christianity is true then?
I would say, like, for example, not to be like kind of like unambiguous, I would say like we don't know what is true and what's not, because there's like every religion has its own identity, which like they say, for example, in Christianity we believe in God, but like for example in Buddhism they believe in Buddha. So until like there's like kind of like a certain evidence about something, I feel like every religion like kind of is true in its own part.
Interesting. Okay, so every religion could be true.
Could be true.
That's really interesting. Okay. So what if you had to put like a confidence scale on like Christianity is true, from like 0 to 100, how much
0 to
confidence
100, maybe like an 80.
An 80, okay.
Yeah.
80%. Okay. Okay. What are some of the reasons that lead you to like this 80% confidence that Christianity is true?
Well, I would say a lot is that I think that it was one of the biggest religions. So like if it wasn't like true or like that believable, then not many people would believe in it. And I also feel because it's kind of like the religion that like most has like data on it, like the Bible and all the like customs in the church. I feel like it's the one that most people like identify with, and like the one that they believe is the most likely to be true. But I may be wrong. Maybe any other religion could like have some parts that are true in one religion and another parts that are true in other religion.
Interesting. I appreciate you acknowledging that you could be wrong. Like I really like that. It's kind of like why we're here, is just not to necessarily instill doubts, but to make sure that like people believe that their own reasonings is good for their belief, right? So all right. So
that was really nicely done. That was really good.
Thank you.
I like you've been really open in the beginning here, and I think that's really nice to see. And there was a little thing. It's just I don't think it's a critique of this particular video, but I think in general it's like maybe a thing to think about. Is there's a tendency when people are talking and expressing ideas, especially if they're feeling a little bit awkward and sort of nervous or something, there's a tendency to nod along. And it can look like you're agreeing, even though you're just sort of verbally trying to just acknowledge that you've heard and you're listening. And I don't know if there's a less it happened more at the beginning. There was just a few like nods when he was explaining his views, and there's a sort of maybe a subtle thing there between like nodding as an affirmation that you've understood what was said versus nodding in agreement. And I'm wondering if there's like a less verbal or less affirmative way of acknowledging the person that said something without seeming to be agreeing, or worse still, validating what's being said, because that would be even worse. And I think that can, it's a subtle key thing, but it's just maybe something to think about.
I just want to add degrees of confidence. So you asked about yes, what did it say?
It said, I hear you. You just told it out. That's good. I like it.
Does that work?
That would work. Understood.
Just kind of like little paddles with different words on them. I'm listening.
I like it. Anyways, you did ask for the confidence scale, and that is on here. So I just want to acknowledge that you have that checked off, basically.
One of your reasons is that it's like the biggest religion, or the most people follow it, and like that leads you to like it being true. And you also had like touched on some other thing, like some of the data behind it.
The data, like the Bible. Like if I just, for example, write I don't know, a book, and I say, oh, it has to be true, then there's like no evidence whatsoever. Like for example, I just made my own kind of like religion. Well, some people might identify it, but until like there's like more evidence. Or because I could just say whatever I want, and it could be its own religion, but not many people could identify with. So I would say until like you have your own community that can support it, can like believe in it, then I wouldn't say it's true.
Okay, I'm not quite sure I follow, so I'm going to repeat it back to you. So there is data associated with like the Bible, but the Bible itself isn't really evidence, because you said like anybody could write.
Yeah,
book,
anybody could write it.
Okay, so what could you give me like an example of like some data that you like leads you to believe that Christianity is true?
Maybe all like the art. I would say the art, and maybe like the crosses, like the ones that are in churches. Like maybe those are kind of examples, because like for example in Mexico there's like a kind of like a body that is supposed to be of like a missionary that was really important. So like kind of like all those bodies, and that in Jerusalem, if I'm correct, is where Jesus lies, and there's like a whole like cemetery and like that. I feel like that's part of the evidence based on it.
All right. Is there any other reasons that you like lead you to this conclusion?
Maybe because I don't know, honestly, because like I guess some people would say, oh, somebody just made it because they felt it was true. So like as I previously told you, I may be wrong about it, but I just feel like it may be true until like for some people, and I feel like if they believe on that, they should believe on it. Like if it helps them like continue through.
Okay. All right. All right. So basically, there's like these two reasons. Like, yeah, you had given the example of like art and like the cross and stuff, and then like it's the biggest religion. Then. So if you had to like assign like a percentage between these two, like which is the most impactful towards that like 80% confidence that Christianity is true?
Sorry, can you?
Sorry, that was a lot of words. Yeah. So like of these two,
question.
like which has
Super
more?
terrible question.
Yeah, I'm not sure I followed that either.
Yeah, that was actually used in the navigating belief course as an example for confusing questions. Also, if anybody hasn't heard about navigating beliefs, it's the free Street Epistemology course that is available online. Just go to navigatingbeliefs.com and you can see that beautiful, terrible question as an example of terrible questions.
You learnt the wrong part of the course.
Yeah.
One thing, just prior to that excellent example of a wonderful question to avoid, there was a moment where I've seen people do this before. It's really nice. Your person you're speaking to is super open and very charming, but he seemed to be sort of suggesting, it could be a little way one way, it could be a little bit the other way. One thing that's useful to do in those situations, I think, is to ask how it influences how that person acts in the world, because we can be a little bit one way or the other. We can acknowledge there's arguments for both sides, but if it's having a big influence on like how they actually act in the world, the question might be whether or not their confidence justifies their commitment to the actions that they are taking, or the influence that belief has on them, rather than specifically how confident they are that the belief is true. Because it actually it becomes much more binary, I think, at some point. You either do or do not act in accordance with this belief in some way. So it can be just a way of getting them to reflect on the nature of the belief and its impact.
That would have been a good question, especially in this instance where it doesn't seem as though they're actually really following the religion, as they kind of, went around with all the different religions being, possibly true. So that would have been a really good clarifying question. Yeah.
I just want to hop back to the checklist. Really hearing them out. I think you were doing some active listening. You repeated back some of what they were saying. So I think that's a check mark on that category.
Cool.
Weight that leads you to the conclusion that Christianity
I would
is
say
true.
maybe the art, because like the art, like if you think about it, it's very similar. Like the main topics are really, really similar, like in all the arts. Like if it had, I don't know, like different, like if Jesus didn't have like, I don't know, like for example, brown hair, and then and another one he had, I don't know, blonde hair, it would see, like you would say, oh, it's not believable, but maybe because all like the arts are similar in some way, or like still have the same like idea, it could like help you believe or think that it may be true.
Okay. If you had to put like a percentage on it, like if you would you put like 50 or like 60, 70, like of the two, like the best, the most people versus, this artwork? Like if you were to find out that, the artwork, isn't really good evidence for the belief, would that like change or influence your confidence?
It may, because like I guess like until it could be, because maybe as you said, like some people would say, oh, the art is just art, and like I guess it could change my belief. But like for example, as I told you, I got raised in a really not religious family, so for me, like if it may be true, it won't affect me that much if it's like not true at all. But for some people, it may like be quite revealing and quite damaging. But for me, like it would just be like, I guess, like something that I'll just be surprised.
Okay. So I'd like to touch on that a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yes,
so, if somebody has a belief, that's like about God or something, And do you think that it changes how they interact with the world, even if it's maybe not that impactful to them?
I guess it may give them a like more positive view on life, like kind of, or like at the same time, I feel it could make it more positive, but also like more like, I don't know, demanding. For example, like if you feel like something is going wrong, you have to like pray or like that, which I feel like it's good, but I feel like sometimes you should take your own initiative if you want something to do it done, and not just like pray and hope that something happens. Like,
yeah,
that's what I feel.
That's really interesting. Yeah, right. Because somebody could, you know, I had used an extreme example yesterday. Somebody had given me an example like, oh, you know, they could have prayed rather than going in and saving a child from a burning building, right? Like that might be an example, but maybe something less extreme, right? They might, you know, decide to pray rather than, you know, going to the hospital, right? Yeah. Okay. Interesting. All right. So go back to the art thing. You had said that would, you know, that's a bigger part of your confidence than it being the biggest religion, but. Then you also kind of said that if you were to find out that the art really wasn't good evidence for the belief, that it really wouldn't sway like your belief in Christianity at all. So is there like something else that would contribute more to the confidence then?
Like, I don't know, because I do identify with the religion, but not that much. So, like, I feel like not many things could sway me as somebody who got raised in, like, a really Christian family where you pray and like that. For example, if the art got, like, debunked, let's say, they might be more affected by it. But some people who were, like, raised in, like, not that religious family, they may just feel like it's kind of, like, a bit of a shock, but then they might just be like, well, I guess that's life.
Okay, interesting. So what about the art makes it so compelling to you?
For me, I feel like, as I previously said, that all the arts, like, that they portray, I don't know, like, any religious symbol, like, they're quite similar. So it's quite interesting to see how, like, even if they're, like, through different times, they still have the same main idea of, like, how Jesus died or how, like, the crucifixion, they still have the same idea, but they may just adapt it to their own way.
So if there was another religion that had a whole lot of artwork that like dated back for millennia, would that be a good reason to believe that that religion is true?
It could, but like, for example, as I previously told you, like, each religion is like have some similarities in between them. For example, each one of them believes like in a god or kind of like an idea of like somebody holy. So I feel like if, for example, they unearthed a new like portraits of like that, maybe it could be the true religion, but until like, for example, not every religion may be right in some way, but they may be like just correct in some aspects. But I guess if they, as you said, if the art got unearthed, like some people may believe in this new religion, or some may just be like kind of like in shock or like in awe about it.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting. You were saying, and I remember you saying before, and I was going to go back to it about the you have the two different religions, and they both claim to be true, right? And each of them have these like competing worldviews about how reality functions. How could both of them be true at the same time?
I don't know, but I feel it could be true because they like, if you believe in it, if it's true, then for you it would be true. But like, some people may believe that one religion is true, but other may believe that it's not true. So they can be both true at the same time, depending on the like the beholder or like the person who believes in it. But like, it makes it like harder to see which one would be true, or if both are true, if multiple people believe in that.
So I think what I hear you saying is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just trying to follow along here. So you could still have.
That was beautiful active listening right there, and just kind of letting him know that you are listening and saying, hey, correct me if I'm getting this wrong.
Yeah, I just say, I think all along, like your body language, your tone of voice, like the eye contact, like there's a lot of things, and they're quite subtle things, but I think you've been getting them really right. I think this is, you know, it feels like a good human connection, and I think that's really important in these things. Yeah.
At this point in the conversation, the whole art as a reason had really distracted my brain, and I was really struggling with this one because like I was just like, art, like how are you drawing this connection? And I was so personally confused. It was hard to really focus in on the epistemology.
Well, did you hear him in the beginning when he said about the art that basically they all depict Jesus as looking the same, like with brown hair? And so that's kind of what I heard. And then I understand that you were confused because it seemed like you were asking again. He's like, as I just said,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could certainly chase down, like, maybe there are other reasons why there's a similarity of narrative. Maybe the reason is that there's a one true origin, but maybe also there are just compelling myths that converge at some point. And it seems like exploring why this outcome may have occurred for other reasons might have been an interesting thread to pull on. But I feel, am I right? Is there an incoming Tic Tac test?
Oh man, I was saying to sound epistemology, I'm like, hey, we need to automate the outsider test and the Tic Tac test. Just have a board and like write your belief here. If you think both can be true, fill this part out. And it's like just right, because Tic Tacs and outsider tests were happening all the time.
They're good. They're good.
Yeah.
Views, even though they have different definitions of how the world functions, because some parts of them are correct and some parts aren't, right? And so then that would be okay. So how does that work if there is two particular claims about, like, let's say, like how the world was created or something like that, or how their God functions, and like they can't be true at the same time, like one particular part of the claim, right? So maybe for instance, like with Christianity, like the earth was created by God, and what was the story of Genesis? I don't know if I'm not super familiar with it.
No.
Yeah. Okay. So like God created Earth, the famous like "Let there be light," but then this other religion that somebody else believes to be true is like, well, no, it didn't actually happen that way. It's like always been that way, or it's all like time has always existed, or something like that. And these are two very different ideas of how the world works. So how would we like go about figuring out whether or not which one is true? Or do you think both of those could be true at the same time?
Both of them could be true, like in some areas, but like this is why there's like so many, like there's like many religions, because like all of them have like their own aspirations and like ideas. So none of them may be correct. All of them may be correct, or just in general, some may just have this
Is that Chekhov's Tic
feeling of
Tacs?
being correct, but they might be.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to say the question right before he started speaking and you pulled out the Tic Tacs there, that might have been a little unwieldy and long and lengthy. And I think if you would have shortened that up to something bite-sized, you might have gotten a little bit better of a response rather than just kind of him talking and kind of repeating what he previously said. So just kind of a,
Did he
something
say
he said
that?
about
I don't remember. Did he say that different religions had differing worldviews or viewpoints? Kind of, it almost seemed like you were messaging that, and I could be wrong. Maybe he did say that. I thought he was saying that different religions have, like, this one has a little bit of truth here, this one has a little bit of truth here, and so they could kind of. But I didn't really hear him say that this one says this one says this. I mean, I appreciate you trying to use an outsider test, but help me understand that better. What?
Yeah, it was definitely a clunky outsider test for sure. Because even with the claim, even when I was initially trying to find a claim, there was lots of other claims like tied in there. And I think somebody in the comments even had mentioned about them not really like believing this wholeheartedly, even though they think it's true. It may have been better to explore something else. And I think that's part of my confusion is I was maybe looking at the conversation differently than perhaps they were. That makes sense.
Yeah, he definitely at one point in the conversation explicitly stated that these two things could be true at once, right? It could be, and he specifically said it could be true for me, or it could be true for one person, and this could be true for you, sort of thing. So there was that, which is why I laughed about the incoming Tic Tac test, but then later he sort of did say, actually, they could be true in different ways, and there could be different parts of this religion. So he's kind of straddling both of those two things right now, which is making it more difficult to, I think, address these with these tools, because he's not sort of picking a lane. And so maybe drawing his attention to that and asking him to really reflect on how he feels about that. Is it the case that two things can be simultaneously true at once, or is it the case that these things are true in their own, or have aspects of the truth? In which case, how do we know which parts are true and which parts aren't true of these different positions? Yeah.
Wrong, but if they insist on it, it's just dumb an idea. So I feel like a religion could be true, but at the same time it could be incorrect, and nobody will fully know. Like, even when every human dies and like everybody like of us like has like passed through ways, people are still not gonna know which was the true religion, because like all of them could be correct in some areas, or none of them could be correct, and we could just have been like created through like the Big Bang, rather than a holy symbol just came out of nowhere.
So I have these Tic Tac here, and this is kind of a way to like explore this a little bit. So
see, the problem is this is probably not going to land as well as it could
Tacs.
do, because he's not specifically making this point now. He's moved on to now. What I would have probably asked him in that position would be to say, is there a religion that you think is definitely not true? Or could I invent a religion that you would say, well, that religion that cannot be true? And then if we can say that, then we can say, well, okay, so how are we evaluating the truthfulness, or what parts of these religions are true? And then what tools might we use to determine that? If there are things that he would accept aren't true, I mean, it doesn't even have to be a sort of made up religion. You could say, is there something I could say that wouldn't be true? Even eventually, once we find the fact of the matter of the world, could we say that? And if that's the case, then how do we determine which of these things we should trust as, or we should be presently convinced of, or treat as true, even if we can never know for certain?
Yeah, that's definitely some good feedback. That would have been a better route to go on this one for sure.
I think you're doing really well. I think you're.
Thank you.
I think you're on the. I think the mechanism of the toolkit is perhaps not letting you be agile to what he's actually saying, or responding to what he's actually saying more in real time. Because a couple of times I think you've tried to use a certain tool to address a point that he's not quite making, and I feel like this is happening again. So I think just being a little bit more relaxed, and dude, this is like your third. What do you say? Your third ever
third one,
So,
yeah.
so yeah,
the first
like
one of the day.
All of this
That was
is
the first one of the day.
First one of the day, yeah. This was
All
day
of this
2.
is
So.
very contextual with that. These critiques are not meant to. I mean, God, I would.
Oh no! This is why I wanted this one reviewed, because I thought it would be a great example that we could rip apart. So.
But it's not super bad. I mean, I've seen a lot worse.
There's definitely worse.
Or you're asking him, for feedback, like, well, I may not heard you right. So, I mean, I think you're the way that you're interacting with him is good. It seems like you're a little bit quick on your, oh, that's interesting. Okay, boom, you know what I mean? Like, seems like you're a little nervous.
Those are
I'm
like
just going to call it the
responses
sushi move now, which is where the ominous Tic Tac comes out and just gets placed to one side.
Yeah.
A Tic Tac necklace.
Just going to put this here.
Like,
Just going to put this here.
There's even an even number and odd number in here, right? Would you say that it's possible that there's both an even and an odd number in here at the same time?
No, not really. Yes and no. There could be, because like, for example, it's kind of like Schrodinger's cat. We don't know if it's even or odd until you count it. So it could be, it's both at the same time, because you don't know until you fully count it if it's even or odd. So it could be both at the same time.
Yeah, but it's interesting. You had said about we could count it,
Mhm.
right? Do you think we can count these Tic Tacs and figure out if it is even or odd?
Yeah.
Okay, so if we could count this and figure out if this is even or odd, how is it that it could be both true that it's even and true that it's odd?
It's like,
Before
as I
you
told you in Schrodinger's like example of the cat, like the cat was poisoned, and like until you open the box, you don't know if it's dead or alive. So it's kind of in a state where it's both alive and dead. So it's the same with here. Until you open the thing, it could be either an even or an odd. Like until you fully count it and know what it is, it could be both, or it could just be
Quantum
even.
physics
like,
is super
if, for example,
useful. I mean,
you
it's done
told
some amazing things, but one of the things it has definitely done that's a tremendous amount of harm is confuse a tremendous number of people. I mean, when you're doing the Tic Tac test, the last thing you want to bring into the equation is quantum uncertainty. That's not what we want to do. The observer principle is not in play here.
And I feel like this is can be a limit to street epistemology, because I think at this point it would almost be better to help them understand what Schrodinger was actually trying to say with that experiment, and not that two things are the same thing at once.
You could just
I
ask.
think you.
You could just ask, like, do you think that those principles at the quantum level apply to larger scales like Tic Tacs, or my understanding of it is this was meant to help us understand quantum behavior, not necessarily large scale behavior. What do you think about that?
One of the sort of similar examples of this I've used is to talk about somebody's bank account. Like, does my opinion, my belief about the value of money in my bank account change the amount of money in my bank account? For some reason, people seem much more able to sort of quantify that and recognize that it doesn't really matter what they believe the amount of money is. That there is a fact of the matter about the amount in their bank account, and their bank is keeping that record, right? And even if they're wrong about that amount of money, they could try and withdraw it, and there's going to be no money in there. So that's I've explored that, and it seems to appeal to the people's intuitions in an interesting way, that there is a fact of the matter. I think for some reason dealing with money makes people more conscious of the issues.
Yeah, I like that. I think maybe I'll start using that one a little bit more than the Tic Tac example, because that's a little bit more concrete, right? That somebody can relate to. Like, if you believe there's more money in your bank account than there actually is, does that mean there is? Right? Yeah.
I think that's a really good example, and I think even in like this Tic Tac test, if you would just repeat back what he's saying, I think that would be like tremendously beneficial. Just like, hey, there's these Tic Tacs. So I think what you're telling me is that there's both odd and even in this container, since we haven't counted them. What is that what you're saying? Is that what you mean? And I think he might be able to explain his way out of that. I don't think he'll. I think that it might do something. Hopefully, I don't know.
Quantum physics and
we're saying even before we count them. Would you agree that there's either an odd or an even number in this? And then is there a way to find out, and then we count it? So
he said that already.
Oh, he did.
He said there is a way. He did agree that there is even or odd, but then he also stated but not really, because and then he went to the Schrodinger example.
Yeah, so he said you could find out by counting, but until you count, it's impossible to know, which means there isn't an underlying fact of the matter. Yeah.
That's why I'm saying then you could say, well, even before we count them, would you still agree that there is either an odd or an even? Are you saying that he had already said, no, there's both, until we count them, there's both? Because he was equating it.
That's what I heard him say, though.
Yeah.
I heard him say that they're sort of both. It's sort of both even and odd, is what I thought I heard him say. Maybe I'm had a brain fart there, but I think he's already said that he thinks it's both until you count them.
Yeah, he said it's both and all of the above, right? Like, he didn't lock down on an answer. Like, he said both contradictory things at the same time, and then that's why he used the Schrodinger's example.
I thought he said it could be.
Yeah, maybe I misheard it too. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Either way, I was confused at this point.
you already knew the number was even, and you told me, can you guess what it is? You would know the right answer, but I wouldn't. So, like,
right, I don't know how many is in here, to be honest. I have no idea.
No, but that was just kind of like an
yeah.
example.
But so, at what point in time should we believe whether the Tic Tacs in here is even or it's odd?
Until you fully count it, I would say.
Okay, so if we had two people that believed that it's true that it's, or one person that believed it's true and one person that's even, and both of them were 100% confident.
So
that
somebody's believing it's
both
true and
even.
another person believes
and-
it's even. This is the world's most confusing version of the Tic Tac test. So one person believes it's true and the other person believes it. So you want to say if one person believes it's odd, not just believes, but says it's odd, and another person says it's even. Yeah.
Would one of them be mistaken?
I've done this so many times as well, though. This is a weird brain screw up, like connections go wrong, and
odd at the same time. Do you think that they would be reasonable in that belief?
There would be, because like kind of there is a right answer and there's a wrong answer, but until you fully count it, both of them are right, because like you still wouldn't know what it is until you finally know what it is.
Right. So if we were to count these then, and then those two people, do you think one of them would be wrong?
Yeah, one of them would be wrong, because like once you count all of them and let's say there's 16, it was even. You can't say, oh, it's odd, because we already know what a number is.
Right.
Like, you can't like just change something that was already founded on and basis. Well, you can change it if there's like enough evidence, but something like such as numbers, which has already been like dated and already been subjected to many changes, it's already known. So
another thing
once
you
you
might
know
want
it's
to do
16
there
and it's
is
uneven,
change it from believe to claim to know. They haven't counted it, but they claim to know that there's an even number, and another person claims to know that there's an even an odd number, whichever the other one I didn't say. But I think that
because
might
like once again he gave both answers, right?
Yeah, I think with the belief though, it's sort of belief, is a fuzzy term, as we've often encountered in conversations, right? And so if somebody says, "I believe it's odd," well, okay, fine, that's what you choose to believe. That doesn't mean it's odd, right? You just believe that's what you feel like. It's your guess, Whereas if you say this person claims to know that it's odd, are they justified in believing that if they've not counted and they have no prior knowledge about the average number of Tic Tacs in a box, and they can't see it and they aren't a savant and able to count it? Like, is it reasonable based on essentially no information to say that they know that is the case?
it's uneven.
Okay, so after we would count the Tic Tacs then, right, and we had those two people, and we decided that there's an even number in here, and we then discovered like the one person is wrong. Do you think their belief was warranted?
Yeah, it is, because kind of like if their belief is that it's even, it's even for them until you finally debunk it. So it is kind of warranted, because if you don't believe in anything, like for the Tic Tacs, it makes no difference.
Is it important for you to believe things that are true? If you were to believe something that was false, would you want to know?
Me personally, I would want to know, rather than having this mysterious of like awe, like not knowing if it was true or not. I would just rather know if it's false or true.
That secondary phrasing was really important. Like the way you asked it, is it important for you to believe things that are true? Like that almost sounded like an insult. Like, do you even care about the truth? Like, what is wrong with you? There was something about it, but then your correction, your reframing was a lot better. And I'm really glad you didn't leave it where it was. It was almost like, I'm giving up on you. Like, do you even care about the truth? Is there any point in this conversation? It was almost, I don't think he took it that way, but there was a slight danger of it there.
Well, I mean, maybe he may have taken it that way, because I think, especially nearing the end of this, rapport was seeming like it was getting damaged.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There was a weird just inflection on that question that I don't think you intended.
You can have that like feeling of like stability and kind of like solemn that I finally know the answer. Like, for example, if they finally, I don't know, find out that God was real, or like if any other religion was real, I would just be happy that they finally know the truth, rather than having this long debated or which religion is correct and which one is incorrect.
Okay, so when it comes to the Tic Tacs, then when would you want to, believe that the Tic, or if you were to believe one of the other, sorry, I'm butchering this question. Apologize.
Yeah, no worries.
So
That's nice.
you have.
Yeah.
Let's
Humility.
rewind there for a second. You were saying about the. Actually, could you
Totally
rephrase
lost.
it? I'm sorry, I lost track.
For the thing I was saying that,
So
for
this
example,
is a danger.
I
This is
for
a
the
danger
Tic
of
Tac-
the mechanism of the method, right? Like if we're so running on rails with the kind of nature of these questions, we slightly disengage from the conversation, and we slightly disengage from the human being and exactly what they've said, and we're trying to fit what they've said into these buckets, and if it doesn't quite go, then the tool doesn't work, and also that I suspect if rapport breaks down here, I'm going to suspect it's because he's seeing that you're not quite getting what you want from this conversation, and he's feeling like he's trying honestly to answer and respond fairly and giving you, as good a responses as he can give you. And clearly there's some disconnect going on here that he's starting to notice. So it's gone from just being a kind of let's have a conversation to, hey, this Jedi mind trick thing isn't working on this guy, and that's kind of trying to figure out why that is.
I think why, like, I don't know if Bucket. It's just that he was giving both answers to every question, and it was like,
Yeah, it was tricky. Yeah,
and it's like, what, like, okay, like I didn't know what to do. I was just confused. Yeah,
I think
maybe
that's where
maybe
you
I
have
should
to.
have. Yeah,
You have to
Go ahead.
like repeat that back to him and say, "Hey, I think you're saying this, and then you're also saying this. I'm really confused."
yeah.
Kind of something like that.
Well, yeah. One of the things you can try to do is bring it into, like, I guess the Tic Tac test tries to do this, but like, is this true for everything in life? Are you always this uncertain? Can all these things be true simultaneously, or does this only happen with it? Is there any other areas of your life or experiences that you would also say the same sort of thing happens, and maybe try and ground it in some kind of reflection about whether he's special casing these particular positions. But yeah, the other thing you can always do, and it's always an option, is if you feel like it's not landing, you could say, "Hey, thanks for the conversation. I really enjoyed it." Like, and just end it. There's no shame in that. There's no problem walking away, and it's better to walk away whilst having maintained some rapport than to try to chase the rabbit a little bit and maybe burn that rapport and make that person walk away maybe a little less positive about the idea of thinking about those ideas. So yeah, no criticism, but just a thought. Ending it's not a defeat.
Yeah, sure. That could have been a good route. Yeah.
So once if you told me, would you want to know if, for example,
yes.
I said even and it's odd, I would rather.
You'd want to know, right?
Yeah, I would want to know.
Okay, so if you would want to know, how would you find out, right?
For like the Tic Tac, as I told you, once you open it and count all of them, you would figure it out. Because for me, like trying to eyeball it would make a difference, because I might count one of them twice or like that until like I can see it with my own eyes being counted.
Okay.
I would feel that is true.
Do you think you should, because
Jumped
like
on
you
his
said,
answer.
you'd want
That was
to
a bit-
know
He's trying to
if you were
talk to
wrong
you, and
about a
you
belief.
are responding before he'd finished there. That again, the pressure of the conversation's building up slightly. The "as I told you" was a really good shot across the bows of like, we need to repeating back, active listening a little bit more. And then you were too keen to jump in on this next one, so now just a tiny little bit of pressure is escalating in the conversation, and it's just
And I think I've
thing.
repeated myself for the third time now with different phrasing. Yeah. yeah.
Love it.
Do you think we should count the Tic Tacs before we come to a conclusion?
I feel like if you do that, then you would already know the answer. But if, for example, let's say I just came and you told me that there's 16 Tic Tac there,
Okay.
I could believe you, or I could say he's lying. So until like I see it with my own eyes, I would still have this idea that I am correct and you're wrong, even though you may be correct and I'm wrong.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, thank you. I appreciate the conversation. Do you have any questions for me about it?
No, not at all.
All right, awesome. Well, what did you think of the conversation?
Interesting, interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a little bit less confrontational,
He
or
was polite.
than you're
Yeah.
normally expected when.
No,
talk
not
about
really.
beliefs?
If I feel like in this type of, like, for example, YouTube videos or
That was such a
conversations, you
fish.
do have to be confrontational, because if you are letting the person, like, for example, if I say, oh, I'm correct, and you're wrong, you still have to, like, pinpoint the idea, because you may be correct, and even if I feel that I'm right and I'm wrong, you still have to, like, talk about it. You just can't let me be in that action where I have control as the interviewee, and you're the interviewer and you have less control.
Yeah, so like what I'm trying to do, and like part of what I'm doing is like I want to believe the least amount of false things and the most amount of true things that possible, right? So like when it comes to the Tic Tac, if I believed that, you know, the Tic Tacs were even without counting them, well, I could be wrong, right? So I personally don't think that's a good reason to believe it. I think that once I count it, then I can go, oh yeah, that is in fact even, and now I believe it, right? Because
that was a bit
if
clumsy
not,
too.
then that leaves me to.
Yeah, I was so stuck on this, like being confused with everything, that it was just completely butchered.
Sometimes I've had it before where I've gone to do the Tic Tac test and then completely forgotten the mechanism. You know, just because you have that brain fart moment where it just goes and you're like, wait, this is clever. This makes sense. Come on, give me a second. Why aren't you seeing this? But yeah, that was interesting. I think that the sort of it's interesting his response to, you know, did you enjoy the conversation? He seems rather muted. It's, I don't really know. I'm never talking to another human being again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Few seconds.
Potentially believing something that's not true.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then I could be interacting with the world with this false belief, and it could
False
be
narrative,
changing. Yeah, and I could be changing what I'm doing, right? Yeah. So, all right, man. Well, thank you. It's nice talking, Mateo, right?
Yeah, Mateo.
Yeah, awesome, cool. So there's a QR code there that'll actually take you to the YouTube channel if you want to view this at a later point in time. Oh, let me get the lapel mic from you too.
Oh yeah.
And then I'll give you this.
This was over the moment you put those shorts on, buddy. That was it. I told you. This is
Oh, you should have seen day 2, man. I had shorts on and no shoes, man. Actually, both of us were walking around with no shoes on. It was the thing up until the not the cops, but the security kicked us out. So that was fun.
Yeah.
After we wrangled down a street preacher. But
Nice.
yeah, I think this was an example of bad SE. I didn't do a very good job locking down a claim. I don't know that I actually got to the epistemology. I had confused them, repeated the question multiple times, and then causing rapport to diminish.
Well, that's no fun if you're going to just roast yourself. I think you're too hard on yourself. I don't think it's nearly as. I don't think it's nearly as bad as you feel it is. I guess we all feel these things worse than they really are. But no, I think you did a lot of stuff that was right. And then again, this is like the third time you've done this in the wild. I think it's you can listen to it and practice it within the community as much as you like. But like when you've got somebody sitting opposite you that's giving all the wrong answers and all the wrong phrasings, and you trying to. I think there's a time to stick to the methods and the tools and stick to the process and there's a time to just let them go and have a conversation with another human being and avoid direct messaging, because I did notice when you were letting go, you were slightly messaging rather directly, and I think you can let go of the tools and the framework a little bit without necessarily having to fall into the bad habits of like, you know, direct messaging and other things. But yeah, you did. There's a lot you got right in this, I would say, and I think like you're clearly self-aware enough to know some of the things that you got wrong. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing more of it. Are you going to go back out again soon? Up?
Maybe once it gets warm out. I think there's another one on the channel. Oh shoot, I forget their name. Jesus Christ is the truth or Jesus Christ is the light is the name of it. And I thought that one was good, and I really liked the person. They were a great conversation partner.
Awesome.
Yeah, and that one has room for improvement as well. You know, there's a couple of different routes that I would have liked to have taken after watching it, but I think that one was a good example. Yeah.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
One
Get
thing
it.
I just want to add about the end of that conversation, after as it was completing, did what you were saying, did that count as messaging? Is that something that
Mm.
we should be doing? I don't know.
Well, I think like once I like officially like ended, at least in my mind, like SE, and I was turning off the switch, then yeah, sure, maybe. But I think that's when the conversation, stops being SE. Because like
That's
for
where
me, I think that's an interesting part of the doing the interview is like afterwards and just like letting it
Hmm,
totally free form.
interesting. I
Yeah.
think I'm
Well,
kind of in the
somewhat-
opposite camp where I don't like to do that just because
Mm.
I want them to have their own thoughts. I want them to think about the conversation. I don't want to influence that.
yeah.
Go off, go take a shower, think about it, whatever you want to do, right?
Yeah, I think if they
Let
have
them have
questions
room
for you,
reflection.
yeah, exactly. I think if they have questions for you, it's really good to maybe respond to those as honestly as you can do. But yeah, otherwise, I would say I
Mm.
agree. I think it's probably good to try and end it and smoke bomb and disappear, and you leave them just with the thoughts of the conversation.
Right.
The thoughts upon a time asked what direct messaging is. I think I would say direct messaging is when you're delivering a statement, you're telling somebody what you think or what the case is. You're not asking them, you're not exploring their position. You're telling them your position. You're telling them your ideas, and that's usually something we should avoid doing in SE. Not should, you really should avoid doing in SE. It's
This
Don't.
is
really bad.
well, we've talked about this before, but I don't necessarily see an issue with it. I think it
Oh,
depends on how
interesting.
you do it. Oh yeah, for sure. Like I wouldn't do it at the end because that's when I feel like it's not a conversation anymore. But
Mm.
I've had plenty of what I think people would consider good SE conversations where I say this is my understanding, but I'm interested what you think about that. Right, like that can go places, right? But I don't think it's at all good to say this is what I think. Okay, bye. That I think is not going to yield
I
things.
think the danger is that it frames it might the concern is that it would make somebody less open maybe to discussing their ideas in a way that would be useful. So if I was to speak to a theist and I start off by saying, hey, I'm an atheist, I don't believe these things, then their answers may be geared towards addressing me as an atheist. Whereas actually it might be useful for them to address me not knowing my position. They could be talking to a theist, they could be talking to an atheist, they could be talking to somebody they've some category they've never come across. So they have to just try to they can't use what they assume about me as a way of sort of avoiding breaking down and articulating their own position. And that's what we want. We want people to think about, break down, and sort of present their position as well as they can without the bias as much as possible. And it also ideally shouldn't matter what I think as the conversation as the street epistemologist. It shouldn't matter. It shouldn't have a bearing on the conversation. Whether we agree or disagree should be ideally irrelevant to the conversation. So, yeah.
Yeah,
I
can
agree with you, Will. But
Cheers.
there's one kind of caveat, I guess. If your conversation partner feels uncomfortable because they don't know your position,
Yeah.
then that could blow everything up. So it kind of depends on context to some degree. And you may not know that context, but it's just something to consider.
Anthony's usually says, can I tell you at the end, if that's okay. I mean, if you really want to, I can tell you now, but if you like, I'll tell you at the end, because I prefer to have these conversations without talking about what I believe, because I want to hear what you believe. I want to hear about what your ideas are. And that I've seen him do that in the face of somebody who seems quite insistent to try to understand or was trying to figure it out. And he seems very resilient to it, and I think it has been very effective. So yeah.
Yeah, that's where I think part of the risk is too, though, is your IO might be trying to figure it out the whole time, regardless,
Sure.
and that can distract from the conversation itself too. So I think you have to be careful about when you're doing it. Like William said already, Will said, if they ask, that's where I will say, well, this is what I think, but this isn't the important part, right? This and that, or if it can help me understand their epistemology better. Like if I'm at a roadblock where like you got to a point, Sushi, where you didn't understand him, I might say the reason I'm having this issue is because this is the way that I thought this thing worked, but I might be wrong about this. So what do you think about this thing that I thought it worked this way? Like that might not be the best way to put it here,
you wouldn't have to say it's how you thought it worked. You could just say, if someone was to say,
okay,
and then you could express that view without it having to be necessarily your represented view.
Gotcha.
So I think that's one way of getting around that.
Yeah, I think there is. I still think that there's a potential for inauthenticity here if we get to some of this. It's just like, so they're picking up now. Okay, you believe it, but you're not going to take responsibility for believing it, or something like that. I think it's just complicated. That's my ultimate point. I'm not saying for sure that one way is right or the other.
I think if Sushi's demonstration today shows anything, it's that sticking to the method too rigidly in any regard is probably not ideal.
All right, we should probably get to the rule brick. See how you did. Go to the top. Diving into how we know stuff. Was there a clear attempt by the SEer to understand the underlying reasons and reasoning methods behind the beliefs? I would say yes.
Was there
was
an
a bit
attempt?
fuzzy.
Sure, but like, what does an attempt mean?
Hey, I don't, Sushi, you're not allowed to
It was
talk.
an attempt.
Oh,
Some of the
You can talk after.
there was an attempt. 100 points. There we go.
Failed attempts.
It's sorta.
All right,
I'll
well-
give myself a sorta.
Oh wow, there's like a
Sorta?
point system here.
Yeah.
This is intriguing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I think
there's-
sort of sounds.
Why don't we look at the example questions? Because
How do you determine the reliability of the sources that inform your belief? What kind of evidence would strengthen or weaken your confidence in this belief? Have you ever encountered information that challenged this belief, and how did you deal with it?
So I think the presence of these questions alone is not sufficient. Like I think it's about how much of an impact they have on the conversation as a whole. And I think the problem is that these questions in Sushi's conversation never really had the made the necessary changes to the discourse that we would hope they would have. And so I think it didn't quite land. I think sort of is probably about right for where this would land. What are the options, by the way? Sorry, sort of, definitely, no,
Definitely there,
not
sort of, nah.
Excellent,
I
fair
think
enough.
the
Middle of the
third
road.
We do
question,
5 points.
Yeah, I feel like 5 points would be appropriate. on
I'd
this
give you
one.
the 15, but that's just me.
Oh.
Well,
Because,
you know
hold
what,
on,
I'm
really
saying the
quick.
10.
Part of this checklist, even though the checklist is unfortunately going to contradict this, is it is based off the attempt and not the response of the IL. We've decided this already. It's based off
Oh,
what
okay.
you
Perfect
do,
sense,
not
yeah.
based off of how they respond.
Okay, then 15 because
That's
there
fair.
was. It just like the answers were. He just kept on giving both, or like kind of evaluating somebody else's beliefs, right?
What would you say was the primary reason for his beliefs?
Yeah. Because his family, well, without saying it, the culture that he was grown in, his family, that's what they believes, right? A culture was a big part of it. But you know, he said the art, which like the historicity of it would be the reason. Yeah, I think that's kind of the two biggest reasons. I forget what his other third. He said the data, but he never really elaborated on what the data was.
Well,
And
he
like
did say
whenever,
that
go ahead.
I'm sorry. He did say that it had been around for a long time, and you even remembered that and reiterated
Yeah.
that. So I remember that. That was good. I thought that was good. It's been around for so long.
So I don't think that these are necessarily his epistemology, more like how he arrived at believing what it was. And so I would question genuinely whether or not we reached a point where we understood his epistemology.
No, I would agree with that. Yeah.
okay. The next one is asking probing question. Is the Socratic method evident with open-ended and thought-provoking questions? Do the SEer questions encourage deeper thinking and self-reflection? I think you encouraged it.
I mean,
I don't know
yeah,
if
I would
first
you got there.
example, the first example question, what led you to this belief? I had definitely
yeah.
asked that in the beginning.
You asked that word
Mhm.
for word.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yep.
this was good.
All right.
I think you did the third one on there too. So
Okay.
if someone had a different perspective, what reasons might
Oh yeah.
they give?
Oh yeah.
Good job.
Thank you.
Being it civil, has the conversation partner consented to the conversation in an informed manner? Is there an absence of aggression, refutation, debating tactics, and that's your questions or tone of voice?
So
I don't know that.
there was a consent off camera. I have the
That's what I
full length video if you want to see it, but I cut that.
Fake
That's
news.
I believe
out. Yeah. Yeah.
I
I mean, they
think
wouldn't be
actually
sitting down the
you
chair and put on the microphone. Are you okay with having a lapel mic put on?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
you did ask a consenting question. I didn't meant to draw it out, but about a quarter of the way through, you asked another consent question whether it's okay to explore the position a little further, and I thought that's
Oh.
always good to do, and was
Mhm.
pretty impressed with it.
Nice catch. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the last one, the refutation is going to be something. I mean, I wouldn't fault you for, but maybe there at the end it could be argued that that was a refutation, but I would overlook that.
Wait, on the keeping it civil?
Yeah, that's the last one. Is there an absence of aggression? No, but the refutation part, I think, with the last thing that you were talking about, might be
Oh, what is refutation?
Disagreement.
yeah.
Okay, counterpoint.
Trying to refute
Okay.
something.
Ah, okay, gotcha. Yes, then
It
I would
depends on
agree
how
with
you
that.
define it too. So
Yeah.
Prompting people to think more. Do the SER's questions indicate a goal to explore beliefs rather than to change them directly? Does the conversation encourage the conversation partner to think deeply about their beliefs, foundations, and validity?
I think this is tricky because
Mm.
I think there were several questions in here designed to do this. I think they weren't quite executed as well as I'm sure Sushi hoped, and I think you recognize that. But I do think that they were there. The intention was there. So I'm not sure whether we grade the success of delivering these questions versus whether or not they were absent at all.
well,
Yeah,
that's what the
questions are
rubrics
definitely
for.
not successful.
That would be what the rubrics for. So the idea is you're just seeing you're looking for the presence of things here, and then you could use the rubric after to assess those types of things.
Sure. Then I would say that they were
Okay.
definitely, the questions were there.
Okay, we're giving them 15 then. Really hearing them out, did that serious response indicate you know what word I'm saying, of careful listening and understanding of what is being said? Does that seer repeat back and acknowledge what their conversation partner has said and build upon it, take into account the responses they gave? So basically active listening. I think that this is what this is trying to get at. And I'd
Yes
give you the
and no.
15. Yeah. No?
Yeah,
Well,
there were definitely places
Yes, I
where
know.
this broke down dramatically. Yeah, this is for the most part, I think it was really good. But there were moments when I think the guide rail sort of came off a little bit, and the listening stopped as a result. I actually think maybe that's an interesting thing to observe. It's like as things start to feel less coherent, as the kind of questions start to get repeated and you're not sure where to go, I think Pierce said this as well, this is a good time to ask questions and really listen and repeat back even more so, whereas actually when things went a bit rugged, you kind of repeated back and seemed to be active listening less. And I think that was an interesting observation, but for the most part, especially at the beginning, I thought that was really good.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree. At the beginning, you did awesome.
First half, 15 points. Second half, -5 points.
Negative 15.
Negative
Come out with
15
a straight
points.
0 points. Even
I like it.
Who's
One
the
thing
cursor
that-
here, by the way? Who's the ultimate arbiter here? Is this you, Pierce?
For what?
Are you doing the cursor movements here?
Yes.
Excellent.
And Sushi, in the second
Yeah.
half, this is something that I do, and it's terrible. But as
Okay.
people are talking, sometimes I'm formulating what questions or what I'm going to say next. Is that
So
kind of
bad.
the same trap you fell into with this video, or was it something else?
I was really confused, honestly. Yeah, just the double answers, or like answering like or talking about other people's beliefs and not directly their own. I was confused, yeah. And then I was just
Fair
trying to
enough.
like use the tool set, like William had said, and then again
Yeah.
like more of the same answers, and then at that point I probably should have just ended sooner.
Yeah,
That's a
ended sooner.
super good
Yeah.
super good
Mm.
point though, Pierce. I definitely do that as well. Like I find myself thinking about like the next question, and I don't realize, wait, shit, I haven't listened to what did he just say.
Exactly.
Which sometimes arguably you have to do if you have somebody that's really long-winded and they've answered the question, but now they're going into like other claims or on tangents. Then you kind of just hold on and then repeat back, whatever that initial thing was, and then ask the follow-up question. But yeah, then sometimes you lose. Yeah, notepad.
Yes, exactly.
Didn't you say you write everything down, Sushi, or was that you, Pearson? I'm mixing it up. I thought you said you
That
wrote
was me.
everything down.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I write
All right.
everything down. Yeah.
Yeah,
I did
too.
have a pen and paper when I was doing the interviews, yeah, and I did write down. And actually, the video that I had plugged before, Jesus Christ is the truth, Jesus Christ is the light, and I was writing thing down, and I used it as a joke, like I have terrible handwriting, and it was a good way to like build rapport, mid conversation. So feel free to use that joke. Just tell people how you have terrible handwriting as you're writing notes down.
I'm told I don't, so I can't use that. So
Oh, really?
I definitely do. I have
Yeah.
bad enough handwriting for the both of us, Quaid, so you could just
Exploring neutrality without leading. Does the SEer's questions allow for a range of answers and encourage exploration? Is the SEer avoiding yes, no, or leading questions that suggest a specific answer?
I feel like you were fishing a little bit for some of these questions a little bit too hard, and that wasn't
Yeah.
ideal.
Mm-hmm.
Felt like maybe you made him feel like there was a right answer and he was trying to fill that. But
Yeah.
still some sort of resistance to it. And maybe that's why he was answering. Well, no, I shouldn't assume.
As you were struggling, it was to sort of a little bit, and with frustration or a little bit of stress ramps up a little bit, as he was noticing that, it was like you were judging or rejecting his answers in some way,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a sort of bad dynamic to start to set out. Yeah.
Yeah, this is where I
Ooh.
gave Sushi the first
0
5,
point.
but
Nil
that's fine.
point.
Yeah.
We'll do the 0.
All right. Degrees of confidence are the references to how sure or how confident the conversation partner is about their belief. Are there inquiries about how we might increase or decrease the conversation's partner's level of confidence? Does the confidence circle back to reassess the initial confidence level stated?
Ooh.
Hmm.
I mean, I
Well-
asked the 80%, but like I also kind of disagree with part of it, because like sometimes when I do SE, I don't even ask for confidence, and I don't always check back in for confidence, because sometimes I think it can be awkward in the conversations.
Absolutely.
So like I
I
wouldn't
agree.
use this as a metric for whether or not it's SE, just in my personal opinion.
I would agree.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
necessarily required. It's nice though.
Yep.
Yeah. It is a metric to take data on whether you had a change in confidence, right?
Yeah.
But I don't like that, because it implies that that's a good thing, whereas that shouldn't be an implication. People changing their confidence shouldn't be a byproduct of the conversation. It should be a byproduct of them and reevaluating their epistemology. And it could be they could be in exactly the same place they were when they started, and there's nothing wrong with that as far as an SE conversation is going. So I just really don't like the idea that we set up an idea that a shift in confidence is the objective.
Well, I mean, if reevaluating, right? If we're using the reevaluate, you could also just say changing confidence, right? Whether it's changing or not changing, that's still an evaluation.
Sure.
Yeah.
We want them to think about whether they should.
Yeah.
Not whether
For
they
their own
did or
satisfaction.
yeah.
I say we give full
Always-
points there, because we don't agree with the idea of reassessing.
Agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Why not?
I like that.
Sure.
Exploring together, does the conversation resemble a mutual exploration rather than one-sided interrogation? Are
0
both
points.
participants contributing a fair-minded exploration of the belief and the idea separated from the person holding the belief?
I did hear you say we a
0?
couple times in there. I heard you say we, but yeah, it was sparse. Yeah, because I was looking for it. I was waiting for the we, and then you finally that was kind of a weirdly
That's not an
phrased.
expression we want to have said very often. What kind of videos do you think Sushi does, poor boy? Jesus.
Oh boy.
I want to keep this going. What other puns can we make here? Okay.
Being real and open-minded, do the participants seem genuinely interested in truth and understanding rather than just expressing their own views? Is there an atmosphere where it's safe to express doubts or change one's mind?
I think you created a really good rapport and atmosphere with the conversation partner throughout. I think you seemed very open. I think you, as I say, you got a little woolly towards the end because you seemed a little bit frustrated, I think, but I think generally speaking, the tone and the atmosphere, I think you made good. Body language was good, like the eye contact was good, like I said, and I think there was every reason for him to feel that this was an open conversation and not an attack or anything like this. So I would say you felt like you were being real.
Agreed.
Sounds good to me. Being mindful of others, did the SER express a sense of empathy and understanding towards the individual's perspective? Are the conversation partners' dignity and autonomy being respected?
That's a very strangely worded point.
Yeah, I don't know.
Let's see the examples here.
Yeah.
I think the second one's fine, but the first question is weird to me.
Yeah.
Because, yeah.
Do you
Yeah. Do you want to take a break? Are there any aspects of this belief that you struggle with from an ethical standpoint?
I don't know how you'd achieve the prior thing without achieving, like if this wasn't the case, if you weren't expressing a sense of empathy and understanding and you weren't respecting the person's dignity, then how could the previous one have been achieved? So it feels like this is a redundant question, frankly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how to grade this.
It's just a weird question to me.
Well, there was nothing that made me think you didn't respect their dignity and autonomy, so I would say full marks.
There you go.
Well, let's say part of the
yeah.
We can do it, but I guess one thing that I would throw in here is that it sounds like you were struggling to understand what the perspective was at points, and it's hard to show understanding. But I think we should still give you full points because that's not something we can necessarily fault you on.
Okay.
So, but that would be the one thing I would say.
How many more questions are there? Just out of curiosity. I was just looking at that scroll bar and I was wondering if it was in. Okay, good. That scroll bar is not indicative of. Okay.
No.
No debating or fighting. Do the questions allow for a range of answers and encourage exploration? Is the SER avoiding yes or no or leading questions that suggest a specific answer? I think this was similar to one of the other ones, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. There were a few leading questions. Definitely felt like you were fishing for certain answers as before.
Are we saying halfsies?
Sure.
It's okay to say, I don't know. Are the participants willing to admit when they don't know something? Is there an acknowledgement of the limits of their knowledge? I thought we were evaluating Sushi.
Yeah,
not the participants.
We've already had this issue. It used to be worse. It used to be in other ones, and then we got rid of it in the other ones, and this is just one of the ones that I guess we missed.
Okay.
I would genuinely prefer this to say that that whenever the participant acknowledged uncertainty or it was willing to say that no, that was rewarded by the street epistemologist, and Sushi did that, and I really liked that you did it.
Great, I agree.
Mm-hmm. Cool,
beautiful.
That'll be feedback.
Oops.
Whatever. Oh, it's gone.
Oh, and please let me help you redo this so we can have like check boxes and things that tally rather than
Yes,
changing
please.
colors manually.
This isn't
Yes,
mine.
please.
This isn't mine.
Only-
So it's just I'm passing it. I've been
Okay.
talking to the I don't even know if I should say who's making this, but I'm sure they'd be fine with it. But I'm not going to, just in case.
Okay.
I've been telling them. That's why I was asking you your feedback, because you said, I think one or both of you said you were giving it feedback, which I never got, but I was going to give that to them.
Oh,
Gotcha.
So that's why I was asking.
This next question, I feel like we should reframe it. How did we arrive at this point in the conversation? Because I think there were points where Sushi was genuinely confused about how he got to wherever it was he found himself. I think maybe this one didn't quite connect in the way that I'm assuming it's intended. Yeah, I don't think we really did connect it back to the initial beliefs.
Experience led you to adopt this belief initially.
I think you asked
how
that
did your upbringing? Yeah, no, he answered this.
Yeah.
He grew up with
How
it.
did we
He
arrive
had
at
talked
this
about
belief?
the
Oh,
name
my
for the
apologies.
thing. Yeah.
I misunderstood
well.
the tone of this. Yeah, no, fair enough. No, I misunderstood the tone of the question. I apologize. Although I think we just need to add there's clearly an error here. Number 19, appropriate shorts, and
Yeah.
I think there's quite a severe
Appropriate
penalty
attire.
for.
Clothing.
Hey, you're really fixated on these shorts.
Yeah,
I couldn't
No,
think
look
that's a
anywhere
good
else
thing.
the whole video. It was the only thing I could look at.
I thought they were rapport building myself, personally.
all right, now I guess we add all these up.
I ain't doing math.
All right, I gotta pull up my calculator.
It is a calculator. It's a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
I know, but it's not set up
That's
that way.
genuinely hilarious. If only we
Yeah,
had the
I don't know if that would
technology to
work.
add up numbers in a spreadsheet.
Oh no! Oh no! What am I doing? Putting numbers in my spreadsheet.
Well, it would be kind of hard to do it this way because it's not all straightforward. So
Yeah, you probably want one column where you could choose the response and then you could assign a numeric value to them and then you could add them all up.
would the points mess it up, or could it
Doable.
still do it with the points? With the points?
No, you
there?
can still do it with the points.
Okay.
Okay, we got a total of 87.
Oh,
What does that
yeah.
mean?
I'm afraid we're going to have to let you go, Sushi.
60 is the
Oh,
Oh,
passing.
no, so 60. 60 is
How much-
passing.
How much do I win?
$1 million.
Oh, cool.
Tic Tacs.
Yeah.
So
$1
did
million
you all
Tic Tacs,
the-
yeah.
But it's a subjective amount of money, so you know
Yeah.
what you believe it to be and what we believe it to be. They may be different things. So.
Schrodinger's cash. We're going back to
Schrodinger's
Will's statement
$1 million.
earlier about the bank statement.
That's it, exactly.
You just have
Did
to
he hit all
believe there's $1
four of
million
the
in your
core?
bank account. Sorry, Veronica, go ahead.
I was just asking, did you hit all four? Did he hit all four of the core ones? Because
Mhm.
that
He did, but did he get all the points on all four?
well, as
think
long
one-
as he got some points in each of them, then that would isn't that kind of the
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
nice go down.
Perfect score for
There
core.
you go. There you
Sushi
go.
There
works
you
the
go.
core.
Yay.
GG.
Wait, oh, you're clapping?
Honestly, so
Clapping.
no joke, dude. For your third ever conversation and out in the wild, and as much as you've been rather critical, I think you did pretty stellar there. I think there's some work to do, but like there's always another conversation, and you just get better over time. I think more confidence in your own conversational approach. You know, everybody has their own style and tone and cadence and things, and I think just finding that rhythm and not trying to necessarily mimic the rhythms of other people or stick too strongly to the rails, I think would be really good. It's probably better to get comfortable with having the conversation first and then start bringing the tools in than to use the tools as a proxy for having a comfortable conversation, if that makes sense.
There's another conversation I did the following day. I think it's titled "Hard Work is Bad," or "Convince Me This Is True," something of that. And it ended up being about like holding the door, and that one was a really great SE conversation.
Cool.
The conversation partner was super awesome. The rapport was great. But this was the bad example, and that's the one I wanted to have reviewed. So
Cool, dude.
But if you're interested, check that one out. Yeah, maybe I'll link that one too. Why not?
You continue to be one of my favorite pieces of uncooked fish.
Wait, you were talking about how you wanted to grill me, and then I
That's
would
true, and then but we couldn't, so it would ruin the whole concept.
All right, I think this is about the time where we end the stream. Sushi, got anything left to say before we click the end button?
Thank you for reviewing my video and giving me feedback. It's given me some things to think about. Everybody that's watching, please like and subscribe and eat some of the fish. I mean, click the button and join my YouTube channel, watch my videos, and also eat the fish. Why not?
And go to
This is
navigatingbeliefs.com, take the course.
Yeah.
By the way, I've seen in chat the calls for me to show my knees, and that's not happening. And I think, honestly, YouTube has T's and C's around this stuff. And
I'm
this
gonna have to end the stream before you do that.
That's fair.
There they are.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody.
See you later.